Hello, and welcome to Off the Beaten Path. Today, I am in rural East Granby, Connecticut, visiting the old Newgate prison. The site is famous for its long and tumultuous history. Newgate witnessed the beginning of American industry, some of the country's first coinage, and is the morbid start of the federal prison system. The old Newgate prison, or the Gate prison, as I like to call it after canceling out the adjectives, is located in Connecticut's historic copper country. America's first mines were built here, mining the copper veins in the local hills. This is how Gate Prison started its life, as a mine. It was opened in 1707 and is the oldest mine in the country. It is among the first mines built in the area after the discovery of significant mineral deposits in 1705. The miners followed the copper vein underground, following a mining procedure known as drill and blast. The procedure involved hand drilling holes 2 feet deep into the rock. They were filled with gunpowder and then detonated. After the smoke cleared, the miners would then come in and gather the copper ore, which was easily identifiable due to its green hue. Under British colonial rule, any sort of industrial activity was illegal, a restriction that was one of the many economic contributors to the American independence movement. Since mining was resource extraction, it was allowed, but smelting was illegal, resulting in the ore being shipped back to England to be processed. In the 1700s, much like today, shipping bulky and heavy objects was expensive. As a result, the mine was not profitable, going in and out of business several times over the course of the next 60 years. In order to make money, mine owners got creative with the ore, smelting it illegally, and coming up with various schemes to make more money. One such mine owner was Dr. Samuel Higley, a Yale-educated metallurgist who smelted the copper from his mine to make his own coins. Higley valued his coins at 3 pence, coincidentally the same price as a beer at the local tavern, and used them to pay workers and pay off his debts. Eventually, Higley got in trouble, not for making his own coins, as it was technically legal at the time, but because the coins were overvalued, having only 1 pence of copper in them. It is unclear if the mine Higley owned was the old Newgate prison, but if it was, the tavern he would have spent his time at would have been the white building standing across the street. Due to how rural the area was, the tavern would have functioned as a general store and a place of lodging, providing the miners and later prisoners with everything they needed. In 1773, the first phase of Newgate's existence came to an end when the colonial government of Connecticut bought the failing mine and turned it into a prison. The prison was used by the colony until being made into the first federal prison in 1776, shortly after the Declaration of Independence was signed. Up until now, the site had a benign existence, as mining was no more dangerous than most other work in 1700s America. However, in a few short years, the mine would take a dark turn as it welcomed its first prisoners. The new prison would be the start of a controversial practice that continues to this day: the use of prisoners as unpaid labor. At the time, this was a new and progressive idea, with the hope that the labor would improve the character of the convicts and teach them important skills. However, the reality of the prison and mine quickly dispelled this notion, and the prison was closed due to inhumane conditions in 1827. The prisoners were kept in abhorrent conditions, being chained up in the mines for over 12 hours a day. The prisoners even slept down there, chained to the wall by the entrance. Every night the prisoners would be chained in, the entrance latch would be locked, and the prisoners would be left to their own devices for the next 8 hours. There was no separation of age nor sex. Reports indicate violence was common during these unsupervised periods. Many prisoners were injured in fights, and even more suffered from exposure due to the cold and damp conditions within the mine. As if the normal conditions weren't bad enough, if you got punished, you could be left in solitary confinement for up to 6 weeks. Solitary was deeper in the mine. Round a bend, the miners wouldn't go in. Chamber was near the water table, so there was often a pool of water on the floor the prisoner would sit in for the duration of their punishment. The prisoner was chained to the floor and was granted no mobility, meaning any time they had to relieve themselves, it would be in the very pool they were sitting in. Needless to say, it was a shitty situation. There is no light nor sound that makes it into the solitary chamber. The prisoner would be completely and utterly alone. With conditions so terrible, it should surprise no one that there were many escape attempts. There were 2 successful attempts during the Revolutionary War. The first was in 1781, when the prisoners, armed with rocks and mining implements, climbed out of the mine, busted through the shaft door. They then overpowered the guards, enabling the entire prison to escape. The following year, a second escape took place, on November 6th. A fire broke out in the wooden blockhouse guarding the mine's entrance. The fire burned through the door and enabled the prisoners to escape. After the war, there was a third attempt, this one less successful. A pair of inmates had been secretly digging an escape tunnel instead of mining. They had almost completed it, with just one more night of work before their freedom. Unfortunately, their freedom would never come. On that final night of work, the tunnel collapsed, burying the inmates inside. The bodies were never recovered and are believed to be there until this day. Despite the dark and sordid history of the prison, there does not seem to be any ghost stories associated with the mine. If you search online, you can find a few paranormal investigators talking about weird experiences, but no stories with any sort of historical support. I think this is one of the few places where the real-life experiences of the prisoners are darker and more horrible than any ghost story that could be conceived by man. Due to the dismal conditions and the fact that most of the prisoners being held were of a political nature, the prison quickly fell out of favor with the public following the American Revolution. Most of the prisoners that were held at the prison from 1776 onward were loyalists, or as I like to call them, Canadians, in addition to patriot traitors. It is said that Washington himself sentenced spies and other conspirators to time in the prison. While imprisoning people for their loyalty to the crown was popular in the period immediately following the Revolution, the persecution had long ended and faded from popular opinion by the time the prison closed in 1827. Following the prison's closure, it was reverted to a mine, with the hopes that modern mining techniques could make it more profitable. One of the first things the new miners did was dig ventilation shafts. The deeper in the mine you got, the worse the air quality became. This, coupled with the fact they were still mainly mining with explosive charges, and explosive chemicals consume oxygen, meant that ventilation was a serious concern deep in the mine. There were 2 ventilation tunnels dug, one straight up to the surface, the other vertical out the hillside. The tunnels were dug by hand and done to incredible precision, almost perfectly straight. When completed, the 2 tunnels would create a draft, circulating the air and greatly improving conditions in the mine. Since the mine had already been dug to the water table, the miners started branching out, creating a maze of side tunnels. These tunnels would occasionally flood, so a steam pump was built to drain the mine. Today, most of these tunnels are partially submerged, but a few can still be explored. Despite the improvements in technology, the mine still proved unprofitable, ultimately shutting down in the 1850s. From that point onward, it existed mainly as a tourist attraction and even local event space. Tours of the mine have been offered since the 1860s, and dances used to be held in its main hall. The State Historic Commission acquired the mine in 1968, and it has been operating as a part of the Connecticut Historic Park system ever since. I hope you enjoyed this trip to the old Newgate prison and mine. If you'd like to visit it yourself, it's about 30 minutes northwest of Hartford, Connecticut. Admission is $10, with discounts for students, children, and the elderly. The mine is open 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. every day but Tuesday and Wednesday, and a tour of the mine is included with admission. The mine has a wonderful view of the valley with picnic benches, so it'd make a great lunch picnic stop. I hope you enjoyed this trip off the beaten path, and will join me next video where I show you some hidden waterfalls of Ithaca, New York.